Hello, everyone. Welcome. Bruchim Habayim to the Chavra La'Aganat HaTeva webinar series. Got an exciting program today. SPNI, the Society for the Protection of Nature, and our affiliates abroad, especially where people are watching from the US and Canada and the UK and other spots around the world. I already have 40 people joined here as we started. Welcome, everyone, and exciting program today. For the next hour, I am coming to you live from New York City, the promised land, the Golden Medina. But the other promised land will be the focus of the evening tonight, as always. Iris Hann, our CEO, Mankalit, is in Israel, I believe, in Haifa, in her home, and will be coming to us. Hi, Iris. We'll be speaking about the state of the nation, especially from the environmental point of view. But it is, news break for people not paying close attention. And I've met many of them so far. I'm in the States now several days and have met people who not really clear that there's an election coming up in Israel. There is. It's on November 1st. That is a week from Tuesday. Hence, Dan Alon and I will be hurrying back, and Yossi Leshem and Rivka to vote. It's a major national election, our fifth in 3 years. I think we're setting a national record, a bad record. Yes, the Bibi is also running. I've heard people were surprised about that in conversations in the last few days. Yes, Bibi Netanyahu is running again, and at the moment he's a slight favorite for his bloc to win. It's the, everybody, welcome everybody, and please in the chat feature, let us know that you're here and where you're coming from. I am hoping the chat feature is not disabled because I see we're live on Facebook too. Welcome to the Facebook crowd. But let us know where you're coming from. We're upwards of 67 people. Oh, Yofi. Oh, hello from Norway. Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, had a long article about Norway recently and the incredible boon they got from their national gas reserves and what they're doing with it, and how Israel is starting a very similar path. Of course, it's a bittersweet bonus. A lot of social welfare and other kinds of societal needs are taken care of, but it's at the expense of pumping as much gas as we can. And I'm speaking of Norway and Israel, natural gas out of the seabed. Natural gas, which is a relatively clean fossil fuel, but still a fossil fuel and what we got to get rid of. Shalom from the Berkshires, Larry. Love that. It was Berkshires. Welcome, everyone, to those just joining. The Society for the Protection of Nature is really happy to host everybody in this webinar series we have every couple of weeks. We're back from the summer hiatus, and actually we have a webinar coming up next week, another live birding webinar from the field as the migration season in Israel peaks, the bird migration season, the incredible bird migration season here in Israel. A week after that, we'll be welcoming our own Nature Israel mission to Israel. Good mission this year, 30 people, and we have a week of really behind the scenes and on the ground nature touring. And we'll have another one in March. Everybody, please check that out and let people know if you have friends, if you want to send us some emails of people who should be getting our mails and learning about the webinar, your communities, your synagogues, happy to do that. Just drop us a line. So welcome, everyone. I think it's about time to get going, 4 minutes after the hour, and we're close to 100 people here. So let's get going. Hello, Iris, joining us from Haifa.
Evening. From Haifa, where I live.
Great. It's a threatening rain in New York. Any sign of that in Israel yet?
Only promises to rain.
Promises. We have them. And Iris, listen, I almost want to start by asking you about as a political junkie, I've been away from Israel for a week, and the election campaign just started a week ago. Actually, it's been going on for like 5 months, but almost nobody knows about it in Israel. It's been so quiet. But now I guess it's crunch time. And I just want to ask you, perhaps throughout your webinar, or now or at the end, but think about what the elections could mean. The kind of sliding door reality. If the change government manages to stay in place more or less, or if the Netanyahu bloc takes over again, what will that mean for the various policy things we're trying to accomplish?
Well, as we see till now, any government, and I'm not going to take any side in this forum, of course, but in any position, the situation is going to be worse than the previous parliament, because we have very few environmental candidates in all the parties. So it's going to be much more difficult as we see.
You know what? That was a huge issue for me at the beginning of the campaign when we learned that Alon Tal is not going to be in the Knesset, and Tamar Zandberg is not going to be in the Knesset.
Tamar Zandberg is not going to be in the Knesset.
Dov Chanin left a long time ago. Yael Faran is no longer there. Nitzan Horowitz is number 6, I think, on the merits list.
No, Gabi Lasky is number 6, and it's a threat too.
That's right. Well, that's yeah. There are a lot of good people who believe in the environment, but not so many of those people that it was like their number one issue. Yeah,
that's right.
Maybe no one for the first time in a long time.
Maybe only Yorai from Yesh Atid, which is very dedicated, and he did a great work. But it's not enough, and we see if we compare to the previous this parliament, we are facing much worse situation. So yeah.
Okay, well, that's really good. At least that's very bipartisan what you just said, so that's good.
Yeah.
You didn't make a political statement, so good.
Yeah, no political statements, but yeah, people became tired here from all the elections, and it's a problem as a whole, but for environment it's much more concerning, because even in elections that people are more aware, environment is not in a good place in the agenda. So now when people are tired, they are even more tired talking about environment. So this is a big enemy for us.
That is, yes, apathy and disconnect, and sort of a microcosm of what I feel about Israel in general here. But let's stick to the topic. Go ahead. Okay. I know you have a presentation to do, so why don't you share that, and I'll share the screen,
and I'll go through the presentation. Yeah. I'm not going to take all the time. I'll leave enough time for questions and comments and so on. Let's see if it works. It never works in the first time, but maybe I will be lucky. Can you see it?
Yes, in full screen. It's excellent. So
it's full screen?
Yes, it's great. Iris, I'll only interrupt you if there's something we don't understand or there's some urgent question or something. So
Okay, so the name of the talk is Environmental State of the Nation, which is very ambitious. I'm not going to go on all the aspects of environmental state of Israel. I'm going to focus on nature, and of course from the point of view of the Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel. Why doesn't it move? No. Oh, okay. Can you see the second slide, or just I see it? Jay, is it okay?
Yeah, we see it. We see it. It's good.
Okay. So this is what we are going to talk about. A few slides about Israel's unique nature, the threats on Israeli nature, what we have to do about it, to cope with it. And then we'll focus on nature and climate crisis, which we're very busy in these days and as a whole. And we'll go to the main challenges and goals for the coming years. So a few words about the SPNI. For those who don't know us, we are a non-governmental organization, non-profit, of course, not politic organization, and the largest and the oldest, and in my eyes, I'm not objective, the best environmental organization in Israel, and one of the oldest worldwide. We are now celebrating 70 years, which means we have been founded in 1953. It's old in Israeli terms, but even in worldwide terms, because in the 50s, very few people around the world were speaking about environment. And our mission is to protect Israel open spaces, to protect nature. When the Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel was founded, we were alone, the only environmental entity in Israel, even before the NPA, the governmental organization, was founded, even before the Ministry of Environment. But now we are very happy that this field is very busy, and there are many NGOs in Israel, environmental NGOs, which do very important work in many fields. But I think we are the leading, I know we are the leading NGO that focus on nature. Now, you can ask what nature we have in Israel, such a tiny country. So look at this map. We can see this was prepared by, it was published in Nature, and it was prepared by IUCN. And you can see here the red areas colored in red. Israel is part of them, like many parts of the Mediterranean basin, is considered as a hotspot. And these areas, these hotspots, covers only 1.4 from the terrestrial area of the world, but they carry much more biodiversity and much more natural assets than the area that they take. And Israel is part of it. Now, the reason for it is because Israel is a kind of bridge between continents. We're kind of a meeting point, not only for populations. We are very diverse in the population in Israel, and we're also very diverse in our climate zones, our botanical flora and fauna climate zones. And you can see it here in the map, 4 or 5 main climate zones. And everybody that have been in Israel, you can see it and you can feel it. If you go, let's say, from Jerusalem, which is in the Mediterranean area, and you drive only 20 minutes or half an hour to the east, you go to a desert, and after less than an hour drive, you get to the lowest place in the world. And so many changes in such a small area and small and short distance. It's a kind of ecological treasure, and it makes Israel a kind of paradise for biodiversity, a paradise from the ecological point of view. I can add to it that we are, Jay, you mentioned before the migration. So Israel is the second migration route, bottleneck for migration, second in its importance in the worldwide. And many species of a number of birds cross Israel twice a year, and for few species, all the population of these species go over Israel. This gives us a great opportunity, a great right, or a great kind of a present that we've got, but it gives us a lot of responsibility to protect this wonderful nature that we have here in Israel. You can see here a kind of a collage of the landscapes in Israel. You can see how diverse these landscapes are, and like the landscapes, the habitats that they present, and the wonderful nature that we have here in Israel. So we have wonderful nature, and we try to protect the nature. And the way to protect, the best way to protect nature in Israel, like in other places in the world, is to protect open areas, open spaces, because nature is in its best, or nature thrives and nature lives in biodiversity exists in open spaces. And open spaces should be broad as much as we can, should be continuous and not small pieces of open spaces. what leads us to protect eco corridors and connection between open spaces. They have to be representative and represent all the diverse habitats that we have in Israel, especially threatened habitats. Now, Israel is in a good condition. We have 25% of our terrestrial land protected as nature reserves. It's high in international scale, but it's not representative enough because most of the area is in the south, in the Negev, and it's combined with the military area. So we have much more work to do on specific threatened habitats that we should give them more protection. And of course, it's not enough to protect those open spaces. They have to be managed well. And the last point is rewilding. I'll go to it later at the end of presentation. So this is what we have to do to protect nature in our small country. Now, the main threats that we cope with in Israel, like in all the world, these are the main threats to biodiversity. The first one is the destruction and fragmentation of habitats. Now, this is right all over the world. But in Israel, it's crucial because Israel is very small and very dense, and the population in Israel grows in rates that even higher than Bangladesh. It's more like developing countries and not a developed country like Israel. The population growth in Israel is 1.8% every year, which is very, very high. It means that if now in Israel we are something like 9 million people, in 1948, when Israel is going to be 100 years old, we're going to be something like 15 million people, which means more 6 million people in this small country. Now, even now, we are one of the most dense countries in the developed world. We are something like the Netherlands and Belgium, which are the most dense countries in the Western world, but we are going to leave them much behind us because our population is growing very fast. And protecting open spaces in such conditions, such circumstances, it's quite a great challenge. So this is the first threat that we cope. The other one is, of course, invasive species, pollution, fishing and hunting. We work a lot about in fishing in the last few years, and of course, climate crisis. I'll go to it later. Just one more thing about the first point. Understanding that the focus should be on protecting open spaces led the SPNI to work very deep and very hard in the planning and building committees. This is the professional background which I come from, because in these committees, the main and most important decisions, the main decisions that concern to the future of the open spaces is taking place. And we are deep in these committees, and we have representative in all the levels, the national, the district committees, and it takes a lot of our work because this is the main way to protect nature in Israel. So the main topics, our main core topics are these. I'll go on all of them. You can see the photo in the background because the Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel, it's a very big organization, and we do so many things. I'm not gonna, and so many activities, and so many diverse activities, and I'm not gonna go through all of them. So I chose one of the photos here to show one of few things that we do and we are not going to speak about. We are marking all the hiking trails in Israel. You can see a nice lady doing it in work. This is here in the orange, blue, and white sign is the Israel National Trail. So this is one more thing that we do. and we're not going to focus on. We're going to focus on nature protection, direct nature protection. And these are the main core topics. First is protection of marine environment. I'll go to more details on this topic in a few minutes. The other issue that we are going very deep and doing very serious work on is the rehabilitation of rivers. I'm going to go to a few details on this in a few minutes as well. Protecting open spaces, I mentioned it before. We do it mainly in the planning and building committees, but not only. Wildlife protection, protecting our endangered species. It can be like in trying to ban all the fun, all the hunting that is for fun, for kind of sport. And more things that we do to protect wildlife and endangered species. We do a lot of work in urban nature. As I mentioned before, Israel is very dense, and we know that the key to protect the open spaces in Israel is to develop in the cities, and we should try to focus and to take more of the, I missed one word, but to tunnel most of the development into the cities to protect open spaces. And if we want the cities to be attractive, to be healthy, to be good cities that people will like to live in, one of the key solutions to do it is to provide urban nature in the cities. And now Israel is kind of a big metropolis in a worldwide scale, and urban nature is important part of our efforts to protect nature in Israel. So we do many things in urban nature. We have been the pioneers in these fields in Israel, and we are very proud to lead it till these days. So this is one more issue, or one more topic. And of course, climate crisis, I'll go to it in details in a few minutes. And of course, a very important activity that we do from the first day of the SPNI is education, because we know that fighting and working in the field of advocacy and decision makers, this is the main and direct work to protect nature, but it's a very short-term work and a short-term challenge. And if we want to do a long-term work and to get to achievements, we have to do educational work, and we do it in all ages, in all populations, and we do, I think, very great work in it. And in the goal, the aim to change the attitude to environmental protection in Israel in a long-term work. So this is our main core topics, and if you'll go to the website, still only in Hebrew, shortly it's going to be also translated. It's already being translated to English, but if you go to the website of the SPNI, this is the topics that you'll see. A few words, just for examples, to see how it's translated, these so big and ambitious goals, how it is translated to a much more pragmatic and concrete missions and work. So just few examples. The marine environment, you can see here some of our goals. I'm not going to read it, you can read it yourself. I can say that sustainable fishing is an ongoing campaign, a very tough one. The fishermen have a very strong lobby, and they fight us everywhere they can. It's not so easy. Marine areas law, in such a crazy situation with the parliament and with elections every 1 or 2 years, it's very difficult to have the continuous conditions to pass a law like this. But this is our main goals. I can say that in the marine environment, we had just about 2 or 3 weeks ago a very nice achievement, a very nice victory, where the first protected area was declared in the deep sea and in the economic exclusive zone, the EEZ of Israel, a very big area, Palmachim disturbance. This is the name of the area. And it's a very great victory. It's an idea that was incubated in the SPNI, and we led it. And of course, the Minister of Tamar Zandberg, the Minister for Environment, she declared this protected area, but all the work behind the curtains was led by us. So we can see fruits to our work, but we still have a lot of work to do in this field. One more one more topic, like I mentioned before, that we focus in the last few years is a rehabilitation of rivers. Now, the rivers in Israel are not the Colorado rivers. They are much more humble and modest and narrow, but they are very important. Much of them function as eco-corridors at the same time. And of course, wetland and aquatic habitats are very scarce in Israel. Many of our rivers were polluted all over the years, and it's very rare to see clean river in Israel. So we have a lot of work to do in this field as well. And you can see here the main goals. First of all, we have to do a conceptual change, because the paradigm all over the years was how to take the water from one point to point A to point B in the shortest way and the easiest way. And this paradigm led to concrete canals instead of natural streams. And now we are trying to promote eco-hydrological paradigm of managing the rivers. And you can see here the other goals that we are trying to achieve. As I said before, new laws, we need a few. It's very challenging in this time, but we are running to long distances, so this is a part of our goals. So this is rivers. Okay. I went to the wrong direction. These are few examples for places that in our world we succeed to protect. We can see a few examples from the last few years. Here, when I point, where I point, this is in Modi'in, the southern hills of Modi'in, an area that was designated for building of new neighborhoods of Modi'in, the city of Modi'in. We found this area very important as an eco-corridor, a national eco-corridor. And after, I think, something like 10 years of working very hard with the population in Modi'in, in the planning and building committees, everywhere we could, in the last year, this area was declared as a national park, and it's a very great and very important win. So this is one example. The other one here is Sasgon Valley in the desert, in the way to Eilat. In this area, there was a plan, improved plan, to a hotel, and we succeed after a very long fight in courts and in the public awareness and more things that we've done. The plans for the hotel moved to not to the center of the valley, but to a less sensitive area. We have here the dunes of Ashdod, the place, the area that I started my way in the SPNI early in the 80s, in the mid 80s, as a soldier, as a teacher for nature. This area is threatened for many years. These dunes were considered a few years ago, till a few years ago, like an area that's what you can find here. We can take the sand and do with it something useful. And after decades of work, this area was saved, and a great part of it was declared as a protected area, as a natural reserve. After really decades of years, that's taking these little children that you can see in this photo to get to know what hides in these sands, in these dunes, and to convince that it's not an empty area. It's full of life and fauna and flora that's important for us. And of course, the ongoing conflict, the ongoing fight on protecting the Jerusalem hills, we're still deep in this conflict, trying to protect this area because Jerusalem is trying, the government tries all the time for many years to expand Jerusalem to the west and to build on a part of these beautiful hills. So we had few wins in this arena, but it's not enough, and there is a lot of work still to be done. Okay, from here I'll go to dive a little bit deeper on one of the issues that we work in the last few years, which is the climate crisis. Now, I think everybody in this forum knows or believe that we cope climate crisis. Till a few years ago in Israel, it was not so obvious, but I think we are, this question is behind us. And most of the people and decision makers in Israel know and recognize and believe and know that there is climate crisis to cope with. But the other part of this crisis, the natural ecosystem crisis, is not in the right place in the agenda. Everybody knows the IPCC. I think everybody knows the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change. But all over the years, the IPCC has a kind of a sister, an international panel that works on international panel that works on biodiversity and ecosystem services. And like the IPCC, they issue reports, like we can see here in the illustration. And in these reports, they evaluate the state of the nature and ecosystems in the world. And what we see, I'll go first to this and go back to the previous slide. What we can see here, that we are in a very deep ecological crisis. Many of our species all over the world are threatened, and the situation, the condition of our habitats, natural habitats, and our biodiversity, which we live on and we live from, and we are based on as a human society, are in danger. And as you can see, here in the red line, human actions threaten more species and may push them to global extinction. And you can see here the numbers, and we are in a very severe situation. Now, what is not spoken enough in Israel, in the world, I can see in Glasgow, at least in the last COP, COP26 last year, I saw that in the international scale, people speak, or decision makers speak about climate and nature together, but in Israel, not enough. And this is the place where the SPNI and we are focusing in. Now you can see here a very nice and very important illustration. It is taken from the last report that was issued by the IPCC. And you can see here that all the discussion about climate change and, of course, human society, This is what we know, how climate change affects us and how we affect climate change. We are familiar with this relationship, but what you can see in this illustration, that this illustration contains one more pillar in this diagram. It contains ecosystem and biodiversity as one important pillar of this relationship, of this situation. And you cannot deal with we can, but it's wrong to deal with climate change without understanding that climate change is combined or is part of the situation of biodiversity and natural habitats. And as you can see here, the relationship is causing now the risk that we face. But the key to fight climate change or to try to solve climate change cannot be done without understanding the deep relationship between climate and biodiversity. And this is what we are trying to do here in Israel, because as we can see in this, not here, here, as you can see here, this is taken from a report that was published by the IPCC and IPBES together. You can see here that if we ignore the inseparable relationship between these two, in the good scenario, we will not solve the climate crisis. In the worst scenario, we're going to cause even more damage. And this is a very important point. We see it in Israel in renewable energies, that part of them are being promoted from a very good point of a very good point of view, but it harms nature and harms climate crisis as well. And we know that we believe that we should go to solutions that are nature positive and do not harm nature. We can see it also in planting trees, in reforestation. Now, reforestation is, it's not a magic solution for climate crisis. If we plant trees in the cities, it's excellent, win-win situation, and it's very important for everybody. But if we go to arid or semi-arid areas, to the desert, and half of Israel is a kind of desert, and we plant trees in places, in habitats that are not supposed to be a forest or to be planted with trees, we ruin habitats and we harm nature, and we harm our best and important ally to compete with climate crisis. And the understanding of the relationship between these two, we still lack it in Israel, and we are trying to focus on this issue. So we need nature, or nature protect us in mitigation and in adaptation when we try to cope with the climate crisis. Mitigation because nature absorbs something like half of the emissions that we pollute, that we emit to the atmosphere. So this is a very important role of nature, not only terrestrial areas, 31%, but also the oceans. The aquatic habitats absorb CO2, absorb emissions, and we need them to mitigate a climate crisis. Now, it's not only trees. As you can see here in this illustration, it's here in the red, marked with red lines. We can see that even grasslands and savannas, which have not so many trees, absorb carbon in huge amounts. So we have the main message is that we have no magic solutions, and we have to protect nature and to understand the relationship between nature and climate. And part of it is protect savannas. We don't have savannas in Israel, but we have very vast areas of grasslands, and it's a mistake to cover them with trees. So this is the mitigation part of the issue. And the other one is adaptation, and how to ease or how to deal with the results of a climate crisis in all these topics that you can see here. In all these issues, in all these areas, nature can be our ally, our key to solutions. And we can see here just one example. I mentioned the rivers before, the streams before. You can see here A in the illustration A in the left side. This is the way, the traditional way how water was treated in Israel. This is a lose-lose-lose situation. A lot of money was spent here and just was washed to the sea. We lose the water because it goes to the sea and we don't use them. The area in the riverbeds was washed and all the land was taken away, and no habitats, no natural habitats, and it's not a nice place for people to walk and to enjoy. But you can see here in the right side, nature-based solution to the same problem. You can see here natural stream of natural stream. The water is moves slow, so it can be absorbed to the into the groundwater. We don't lose them. It doesn't cost much more. It's even cheaper. You can see here natural habitats, wetlands. It's a much more beautiful place, and we get to solve the same problem in a much more wise and much more nature positive attitude. So this is just one example. We have it in in all the topics that I mentioned before. One more thing is Israel is a small, I mentioned our extraordinary biodiversity. What we can see here is the estimations or the forecast, what is going to happen till the end of the not the decade, the century. And we can see here that the consequences of climate crisis in Israel are more severe if we compare it to the average, to the international average consequences. And we can see here the numbers. It's very frightening, even I can say. It's a good reason to be very worried what is going to happen in this area. And we have to remember that we have neighbors that have less resources than we have to compete with this situation. And we have a very sensitive area, very sensitive from geopolitical point of view. And it doesn't end in environment. It doesn't end in nature. It's a kind of a geopolitical threat to Israel, this situation. So this is what we cope with. And this is what we can do as an NGO, because we are not a governmental agency. We don't have authorities by law. We are not rich as the JNF. We have the power of the public that support us. Here are photos from Glasgow, from the climate parade in Glasgow last year. And this Friday, we are going to be leading, SPNI, we're going to lead many people in the climate parade here in Tel Aviv. It's going to be taken Fridays, 4 days before the elections. And it's a kind of wake-up call to our Knesset members, to everybody, that this issue cannot be neglected. This issue is not a minor one, and we should focus on this issue because it's one of the most important things that is necessary to our life quality and to our existence. And our main goals in this issue is, of course, first thing is to gather the scientific information. As I mentioned before, the relationship between ecosystem and biodiversity and climate crisis, to transform this information to policy, because to talk is not enough. We have to translate it to very specific goals and to a work plan. And this is the second thing. Of course, to promote a climate policy in planning and building committees, and there's so much to do in this field. We are it's a lot of work to do in this issue in Israel. And of course, as I mentioned before, to prevent solutions that harm nature, like reforestation in arid areas, I mentioned it before, and to promote solutions that are nature-based solutions. And one more thing is we understand that it's not enough to protect nature or to defend nature. It's a time to do one more thing, to do one more proactive thing, not only to protect what we have, because we lost so much during those years. So we are trying to do rewilding in Israel. You can see here the pilot in Kfar Upin. This is Jordan. It's somewhere here is the Jordan Valley. This is an abandoned fish pond that is not in use anymore. And in a very unique project that we lead, SPNI lead, of course, collaboration with the kibbutzim here and with many partners, we lead a project of rewilding and taking this area, this neglected area, and converting it to a wetland. And it's amazing to see in how in such a short time this area comes to life again. And we can see here birds and more species that smell what is going on and come back to this area. And we're going to go on not only here in this pilot, but also in Magan Michael and in more places in Israel. I mentioned before that we are very crucial point, we are a bottleneck for migration, and this area, like other places in all over the country, is crucial for migrating birds to stop on their way, to get food, to rest, because the way to the south, from us to the south, is a very long and very threatening desert. So we are a very important point in the migration route. So this is what we are doing, and this I choose this photo to finish the presentation. You can see here our gap years, young people, very devoted young people that work in all our units. I am camouflaged somewhere here. You can see me or not inside, and together we will do it. We'll protect Israel nature. I think I spoke enough, even more than I planned to. I'll stop sharing, and Jay.
Yeah, thank you very much, Iris. You did shared a lot to take in. I took some screenshots for my own benefit on this trip, and yeah, there are a few questions already in the Q&A, and I have my own, but let's honor these people that have written. Miroslav, who's here from Belgrade, as usual, wonders, how can you be even somewhat optimistic given the demographic rise that you mentioned? He sees that that'll give us no chance to save open spaces, the needs for food, water, housing, everything, or so much more. Why are you optimistic?
I have no other choice. otherwise I can stay in bed in the morning. Why should I bother?
That's how I feel. That's how I feel too about it.
No, but seriously, we know that if we stick to the policy, to planning and building policy that concentrate the development inside the cities, we can provide solution to all this population in the coming years. Of course, there are people like Alon Tal, Knesset member Alon Tal, that speaks about population growth in Israel, and maybe it's time to speak about it. We in the SPNI still do not deal with it. We take all these estimations as given, and we know that if we stick to the plans, we can provide solutions to everybody. But this means that we should not build new settlements, and we should be very efficient in our development. So there are solutions. This is the reason I'm optimistic.
I agree. I mean, in 3 words, the answer is dense, sustainable cities. And sustainable in every way. As you said, cities that people want to live in. And people want to live in cities. Cities are the answer, the future, and great cities are the greatest places, next to nature, of course. Lucy, our friend Lucy asked about where can she find these pre-election environmental demonstrations? I would just say, I mean, Facebook, looking for keywords on Facebook. Is there any place you can direct her to if she wants to get active in an environmental demonstration?
Oh, focus on the election?
Yeah, I mean, if there's anything, I mean, it's a few days away now, so I don't know, but...
tomorrow there is a panel in Tel Aviv, Knesset Boeret. It's in our Facebook page.
Okay.
Not in English.
Okay, but yeah, Lucy, I think, reads some Hebrew. So if you do read Hebrew, they, of course, and I mean, in general, first of all, most of the parties or the big parties all have some English language, social media stuff. But you won't find environmental demonstrations per se on those pages. But mostly, try our page in Hebrew where there's.
We have tomorrow. Tomorrow there is a great big panel in the Tel Aviv University. You can find details in our Facebook page. And all the main parties send a representative, and there is going to be a kind of panel on environmental issues.
Okay, is that at the Porter School?
I think so.
Okay.
No, it's in the Museum Leteva. In
the Nature Museum. Yeah. Okay, yes. That's cool.
But you can find details in our Facebook.
Fine Art Nature Museum tomorrow.
Yes.
Have the Abraham Accords, there was some environmental language in the Abraham Accords. David Goldfarb asked, has there been anything that's happened with that since the Abraham Accords? Any movement with environmental cooperation and with the Abraham Accord states?
Not as I know. Maybe the NPA as a governmental agency have a kind of collaboration, but I don't know. I can say I didn't mention it, but it's not in Abraham Accords, but we have a very great conflict with the CATSA, with the agreement to increase the amount of oil that cross our sensitive Elat Gulf. It's not part of the agreements, but...
Right. In other words, so far the net total of the Abraham Accords environmentally have been just a huge threat to oil spills in the Gulf of Eilat. But that's a private initiative that's an outcome of the Abraham Accords, but not an intended outcome or not an official outcome.
It's not part of it.
Right, correct.
But maybe the government has did something, I don't know.
There's talk. I mean, Yossi Lesher, the famous ornithologist who's traveling with us now, was in Dubai. Israel had a big an environmental booth at their Dubai Expo several months ago. I mean, there's talk and there's, and there's some amazing stuff and there's a lot of money in some of those states for this kind of stuff. So hopeful, but it hasn't happened yet. Gila Langer says, wow, and Iris, I really want to answer this, but go for it. When I think about reforestation, I think about the efforts of the Jewish National Fund. Do their practices take into account the nature of the ecosystems they work in? Do you work with them?
Not enough. It should better that I'll answer it and not you, Jay.
No, but the question is about afforestation. No, first of all, we work with JNF on various ad hoc things here and there.
Yeah.
But in terms of afforestation, we work against them. And our report from a couple of years ago, which there's a copy of in English, lays out exactly how planting the wrong trees in the wrong ecosystems harms the natural ecosystem. That is the quick answer.
Exactly.
And
we work with them. We are partners. Our partner in fight. Let's say in fight, for example, fighting against development in Jerusalem Hills. They are very important partners in this conflict, and they made a very great progress in environmental aspects of forestation in Israel. They are much better than a few years ago, but they are still trying to reforestate areas that should not be covered with trees. And in this issue, we have a very deep conflict with them.
Mm-hmm. Dan Pava is asking about the best way to support us, and coming to Israel and seeing it for yourselves, and joining us with financial resources would be a great way to support us. And in terms of programs outside of Israel, thank you, Dan. I mentioned I'm here right now together with our Deputy CEO, Dan Alone, and with Yossi Leshem, a former CEO and one of the world's leading ornithologists, and Professor, General retired Mansour Abu Rashid of Jordan, who is helping us to hopefully dedicate by maybe this time next year a cross-border wetland reserve. Iris mentioned it. It's right on the Jordan River, our flagship site at Kfar Rupin, and we're traveling around. So we were in Austin and had a chance to meet a lot of people. We're in New York now, a big event in New Jersey tomorrow night, the Tenafly JCC, the Kaplan JCC in Tenafly, New Jersey. If people want to come, please contact us. We'd love to invite you, and other meetings in New York. And we're heading to Toronto on Wednesday. We have a couple of public meetings there as well. One open to the public and a smaller one with the author Margaret Atwood. So these are all types of things you can see in North America. And we do this 2-3 times a year. There are other plans for more trips to Israel and more trips in Israel. And in America, we're talking about having a birding trip in North America, in the United States next year. We've been doing that in Canada for several years, but our birders can come over here and show you some incredible birding sites right here in the United States. So that's all on the agenda. Question here about deserts shouldn't be reforested. Oh, there's a tendency in the West to plant more trees. That's true. I think Adina, Iris mentioned the albedo effect. Taking a light-colored area and planting dark trees on it increases heat, and it takes 70 years for the trees to be mature enough to absorb enough carbon. So, link to the webinar on deforestation. All of our previous webinars from the beginning of April 2020 are listed under recorded webinars on a drop-down on our homepage. On our homepage of our website, Explore Nature Israel. You can find it there, or write to us and we can send you that link. Couple minutes left. I don't know if we have any more questions there are more questions. Do we do this in Europe, Daniel? In Europe, UK too. Do we do what? I don't know. I'd like to come to England, and Yossi Leshem goes to England every couple of years to speak. But if we're invited, we'd love to come there. And did we skip over anything here? Oh, somebody wants to know about the main features of the climate zones. I want to look, Iris, you can begin to answer that. I'll look in the chats. Birding trips. For specifically birding trips, look on the website of BirdLife Israel. They keep you updated on that stuff. And looking, somebody wants to know where we are in New York. You can find us tomorrow night in the Kaplan JCC in Tenafly, New Jersey. 7 p.m. event. Really interesting panel on the wetlands rewilding that Iris spoke about. So, Iris, you're having a chance to look through the chats. People are thanking you.
I'm trying to, so many things. Reading recommendation, ministry for the future. Okay.
Yes, very recommended. I've heard that about that. Sea level rise now. Okay, that's oh no, that's not a book.
Yes, but sea rise in Israel, it's not such a big threat comparing to other places. It's not one of the main problems that we cope with. Travel trips. What did you ask about the climate zones?
Somebody asked in the questions if you could describe the differences between the climate zones.
No, I didn't go deep to it. It's
a lecture in and of itself. It's easily Googleable. Yeah.
But they are very diverse. Mediterranean is one type. The Sudan is more arid type of a climate zone. We have a very high desert, which is I forgot the name of the climate zone. We are very diverse in it. So.
And that little tiny corner of Israel that's Mount Hermon, which is a whole another mountainous zone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are at the top of the hour. I want to thank David Amichai, who's been doing back office faithfully here and keeping us posted from his home in Jerusalem. Yeah, David, somebody wanted a link to something. Anyway, we will get to you what we get to you and contact us if we are remiss. Iris, thank you very, very much for
it's very warming to see those greetings and those words from all over the world. It's really so nice to see. I'm reading from all over the world. It's really, thank you. All the participants, I can't see you. I just can read a part of the chat, but thank you all.
Yeah. Gila, I don't know if we will send you, there's a forestation report put out by Alon Rothschild, our Director of Biodiversity, in English, and it's very well summarized, explains exactly what is the problem with JNF forestation. Thank you very much. That's on our website under publications and reports, and Gila, write to us if we didn't get it, or David, if you find Gila's email, send her that report on from Alon Rothschild on afforestation.
Jay, I'll send you the presentation. People ask here if it will be, I'll send you.
Okay, great. That's wonderful. Thank you very much. And we'll talk. Thanks, Greg. Good luck with the last stretch of the election campaign, because I didn't press you on asking which is better for the environment, but, we'll just have to see how it plays out.
Yes, we'll try the best.
Yes.
And, this Friday we have the climate parade, so we'll try to influence.
Right. Those of you watching from Israel, come to Tel Aviv and vote with your feet. Join us and tell our politicians that climate is not anything. Environmental issues are not to be ignored.
It's not a luxury.
Not a luxury. Thanks very much, Iris. Thanks everybody. Thanks, David, and to all of our people out there. Thanks to our boards in the States, Canada, UK. Appreciate all the work you do. Thank you to all our volunteers and supporters. Signing off.
Good night.
Good night, good afternoon, good morning. Bye-bye.
Bye.